Hello, hello, hello. Could you please let us know if you can hear us? Please let us know.
Yeah, that's what I do, Laura, as well, very often. Yeah.
So let us know. Tell us in the comments that you can hear us loud and clear. Yes, good. Thank you, Marina.
Good.
Say hi. Hi. Thanks, Tina.
Excellent.
Good.
Excellent.
Good.
And I've got it on my thing as well.
Oh,
so
good.
I
Paul.
can moderate.
You're fully prepared.
If we need to.
Fully prepared. So welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Jace. Thank you, Alison. Hello, everybody. We've got 29 people with us at the moment. Hi, Laura. Hi, Leslie.
Ben Nevis.
Ooh. Thank you, Dorothy. Hi, Whitson's mom, Monica, Lise, or Lisa.
Isn't it Lisa, like Liesel?
I don't know. I'm sure Lisa will tell us.
I think she said, yeah.
So thank you very much for joining us this Sunday afternoon for Rich and Paul's Read Along.
Not the other one. No, that was this morning. Yeah.
Hi there, Sarah. Oh, good. Excellent. I'm glad you're looking forward to it. So are we. It's a chance to talk about books. And we're just going to just wait a little bit for people to arrive and say hi. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Lovely. We're just going to wait for people to check in and say hi, because that's what people like to do. Hi, Janet. And we're very grateful for anybody that joins us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you've had quite a few videos from us recently. You've had my daily vlogs and you've had Sunday chat, and now you've got Read Along.
In fact, it's was yours at 6 o'clock last night?
Yes.
Paul. So that's 3 in 22 hours.
I know. We're prolific. Prolific and horrific.
Yeah, horrific, I think.
Good afternoon, Vivi. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Tony. Hi, MJ. It has been a Richard and Paul weekend extravaganza. Yeah. Well, you know.
And we've got on with life as well. I've made bolognese. I've made chili. You've done various things. You've done lots of washing.
Lots of washing this weekend. I wasn't going to do lots of washing this weekend, but I suddenly thought I better refresh my winter jumpers, seeing as it's going to be cold again this week and I need them for work. My poor old jumpers. They're sat there by the dehumidifier at the moment, drying in the breeze of the fan.
East Coast of America. Isn't Maine on the East Coast?
Hello, the Herbalist Cottage. Hello, Victoria. Hello, Leslie. Hello, Patricia. Welcome. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Any more? We've got 57 watching at the moment. How wonderful.
Excellent.
It's a small community centre.
Not that far up north. What's it below that? Isn't it New York below there? I'm not very good with American states at all.
Well, you're better than me.
Yeah.
I've got absolutely no idea where anywhere is.
Well, I know where Maine is because that's where Jessica lives, of course. And I've been to New York, so I do know that.
Jessica? Yeah. Who's Jessica?
Jessica Fletcher.
Oh, Jessica.
Yeah.
Jessica Fletcher.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's in Cabot Cove, isn't she?
She is.
Fictional town of Cabot Cove.
Is it fictional? I'm sure it's real. It's like Midsummer Murders.
If it was real, it would have been closed down by now.
It would have changed
by the police.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think by the state police. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Maryland.
Hello, Nettie. Hello, Nicola from Cleckheaton, West Yorkshire.
I don't know that one. Maybe Vivi knows Cleckheaton.
Yeah, not too bad. We've had our ceramic heater on, the marvellous ceramic heater, which is great for low-cost warmth.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's pretty good, actually.
It's good.
It's got a sort of eco setting, which means you can actually set the temperature. You know, it doesn't have to be like a traditional fan heater, which just blasts out the hot air continuously. This one comes on and off and regulates the temperature. So you can set it to like 17 degrees and it's perfectly fine. Because, of
Marvellous.
course, to us, 17 degrees is like the Bahamas.
It is a bit, yeah.
It is.
Oh, Dorothy knows Cleckheaton. There we are. Actually, it sounds a bit sort of Irish.
Hi, Nancy
doesn't it?
New.
Yeah. And
Hi,
Layla's had a
MJ.
reminder every hour to make sure she didn't forget this live. That's very sweet.
We have got our hot beverages. I'm drinking a black tea, and Paul's having a white tea.
Yeah.
Yes. How lovely. How civilized. So we've got 68 people watching. I guess we should start talking about books.
I think everyone who has read either The Owl Service or Thursday Murder Club should put their hands up so that we can see.
How'd you put your hand up?
You just put your hand up. Then we can look through the camera and we'll see them. There's quite a few putting their hands up. Thank you. Thank you. It's called imagination, Richard. It's all about the stories in books.
Patronizing. So plenty of people appear to have read the books,
Which is great.
which is really lovely. That was the whole point of it. And we didn't want to choose two books that were on the bestseller list that, you know, were the most popular books at this moment in time. We wanted to try and sort of mix it up a little bit. I think yours is.
Yeah, mine has sold over 1.4 million copies or something in the UK. So it's a huge bestseller, but is for 3 years old. 3 years old.
Yeah. And of course mine, the Owl Service, which we're going to start with, is from 1967, the year I was born.
Hang on, 1967 plus 39. That doesn't quite add up. Is there
Shock
something
horror.
you've not told us?
Shock horror, I'm not 39. I don't look 39 in this lighting, I can tell you.
So, The Owl Service. How
Did you read it, Paul?
I did read it. Yes.
Let's have a look at the version that you read. So this is Alan Garner's The Owl Service. Oh, it's back to front. It's like the mirror, isn't it? The tablet does weird things to the visuals. The Owl Service, 1967. Now, the reason I chose Alan Garner is that Alan Garner's one of my favourite novelists. I haven't read all of his work, but I was introduced to Alan Garner when I was a young child, and I think it was probably my dad. Yeah, because I grew up in Cheshire and my grandparents lived in Alderley Edge. I grew up with the legend of Alderley, which is all about a wizard lying under the rocks in a cave with all the knights waiting to be awakened to fight Britain's final battle against evil. And The Weirdstone of Brisingamen, which is the first Alan Garner novel that I read, was set in Alderley Edge. And it was an adventure, a traditional adventure story. And I grew up visiting Alderley Edge, which is a wooded area, and it's a sandstone outcrop, which sort of sits above the Cheshire Plain. And it's quite a striking feature. You can see it from miles around. And it's a network of caves, tunnels, woodland, mines, old copper mines. And The Weirdstone of Brisingamen is set in this area, and it's about the adventures of Colin and Susan. And there are 2 books in this series, in fact 3 books: The Weirdstone of Brisingamen, The Moon of Gomrath, and Boneland. And it's a sort of magical fantasy adventure, which is quite exciting. And I'm not going to say any more about that because that's not what this video is about. But The Owl Service was published, I think, before The Weirdstone, and is a very different book. I tried to read The Owl Service when I was a child, but I didn't quite get into it. And I think that's because it's slightly more adult
Yeah.
I think it's aimed at young adults rather than children. So I tried it again this time round, and I have to say I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to dig a little bit deeper to fully understand the meaning behind it. And this is the thing about Alan Garner. He tends to weave old British mythology into his stories and gains inspiration from those ancient stories and also the ancient landscape as well. And I think I said in the newsletter that he tends to bring a real sense of place to his books. Now, the coincidence with the Owl Service that we found out was it's actually set, and the original series made in the late 60s was filmed there, just around the corner from where we stay in Wales, near Dolgelly.
Isn't that bizarre? That's
I
utterly
know.
bizarre. When you told me, I thought, surely he's wrong. But no, you're right.
Yeah, which is, just amazing. And I can honestly say that the landscape of North Wales just lends itself to myth and legend completely, because it's so, what's the word? The mountains and valleys dominate the area. And it's so dramatic that one can only be taken to another place and time by simply looking at the landscape. You can imagine, the knights on horseback or wizards and witches, and I don't know about you, but when I'm in a landscape like that, my imagination starts to run wild. So if I were a writer of fantasy novels, I can just see how inspired I could be.
Yeah.
And indeed, Alan Garner is inspired by the landscape and the myths and legends of of Wales, with this story, The Owl Service. So let's have a think about the legend behind The Owl Service, first of all. So many of you will have spotted in the books that it's all about Blodeuwedd, which is the woman made of flowers. So I'll just sort of recount the legend briefly to begin with. So you've got, first of all, Arianrhod. Now, she is the mother of Clew. And for another reason, there's another backstory to Arianrhod, but basically she curses Clew to never be able to marry a human woman, which is quite sad. So he gets his uncle Gwydion, who's a wizard, with the help of another wizard, to conjure up a woman made of flowers that he can marry. So they get married, and Blodeuwedd isn't particularly happy about this because she's been made of flowers, she's just there. She's never experienced a full life.
Mm-hmm.
So she is automatically expected to marry Clew and be in love. And she kind of isn't. She's dissatisfied. And she's also left alone quite a lot I presume, in the castle, in the medieval castle. And one day, Gronw comes knocking at the door. Gronw is a hunter, and I think he's a knight or something. And they fall in love. Now, this poses a problem because she's married to Clew. So they hatch a plan to murder Clew. Now, Blodeuwedd is a bit scheming, really, because she has to question Clew about how he can be killed because he's slightly magical. So he tells her the story of exactly how he can be killed. And it has to be 1 foot in a bath, 1 foot on a goat. I know this is a bit crazy. Neither inside nor out, and with a spear that's been forged over a year, only at the time that Mass is taking place. Bit complex. So she thinks, well, I'll be a bit clever here. And Blodeuwedd says to him, why don't you show me exactly how you need to be standing in order to be killed? So they trick Clew into standing in this position by the river, 1 foot on a goat, 1 foot in a bath, neither inside or out, so he's covered up. And Gronw tries to kill him, hits him with this spear that's been forged for a year. And it does hit him, but he magically transforms into an eagle and flies away. Anywho, Gwydion, the wizard, tracks Clew down and transforms him back into a human. And then the hunt is on to get his own back, basically.
And does he?
Well, what happens is he challenges Gronw to a fight to the death and says, you know, I'm going to kill you, basically, for doing this to me. And what happens is they agree to this, and basically Gronw says, you can kill me, but I'm going to have to stand behind a stone in order for you to do it. He says, okay. Clew says, okay. And basically this spear flies through the air, goes straight through the stone and kills Gronw.
Oh.
Blodeuwedd, meanwhile, is now going to be cursed for her bitchery, and she is turned into an owl. And this is to curse her for the rest of all her time, because the owl is hated by the other birds and will always be harassed and always be persecuted. And Blodeuwedd means flower face, but is also the modern language word for owl. And that's basically the story of Blodeuwedd.
Yeah, which is behind the owl service.
Which is behind the owl service. So when you know this legend, you begin to realise that the spell of this valley where the owl service is set is contained within the owl service.
It's set there.
No, it's contained
within
the owl service. And as you'll know as readers of the books, the owl service is literally a dinner service with a pattern, a floral pattern, which Alison interprets as owls. And what does she do? She traces the owls, and this releases the spell. And she becomes basically possessed by the spirit of Blodeuwedd.
Yeah.
So in the story itself, we've got 3 main characters, Alison, Roger, and Gwyn. And their lives start to mirror Blodeuwedd, Clew, and Gronw.
Yeah, and it is a complete mirroring, isn't it, really?
It is sort of, in a way. There is some sort of sexual tension in the book, which isn't fully realised, but it's kind of there because these are teenagers.
Yeah.
With, you know, their hormones raging and all of that. So in the book, it starts off as Alison's a little bit unwell and she's in her bedroom and she hears a scratching sound at the ceiling, and Gwyn comes to investigate, and that's when he says to her, well, it must be rats, you know, or mice. He taps on the ceiling and they tap back, which is, I found really spooky.
Yeah, it is quite spooky. Yeah.
Yeah. He goes into the loft and he finds the owl service.
The dinner service.
The actual dinner plates. And brings one of them down. But as he touches one, he has an experience. He has this sort of spaced out experience. And at the same time that that's happening to him, you've got Roger, who's down by the river, by the stone of Gronu.
Which is the one where the arrow was, the spear was thrown through.
Yeah, with the hole in it, which apparently is still there in that valley. The prop they made as the stone of Gronu is still there in that valley. I want to go and visit it, Paul.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Anyhow,
if we can find
at
it.
the same time as Gwyn takes the plate from the loft, Roger has an experience down at the river and feels rather strange. So something's happening, and you get this feeling that things are sort of trying to come together. And I won't talk about it in too much detail in case there are some people who haven't read it. And I certainly won't give away any of the secrets. But this starts off a chain reaction because Alison becomes obsessed for no real reason at all in this owl service and tracing out the pattern on the plate, which is actually just a floral pattern.
But what she does is she does the tracing, and then she sort of uses origami to put them together. So she has a sort of set of owls that vanish, don't they?
That start to disappear, as does the pattern on the plates.
So once she's traced the pattern disappears.
Yeah, and we're thinking, what's going on? It's quite confusing, and it's easy to see at this point why a child reading this book might give up, because it's starting to feel a little bit complex, and you're having to go slowly to sort of fully understand what's happening. And it's sort of taken a step further because there are other background things going on. You've got other characters which are acting strangely. You've got Gwyn's mum, Nancy, who is the housekeeper, and Gwyn is the housekeeper's boy.
Son.
Yeah, and they're kind of in service at the house. And she's continually angry all the time and gets even angrier when she realises they've discovered the owl service.
Because...
well, I don't want to give that away.
I think you give that away.
Well, it's quite complex. No,
it is.
You can't give that away without giving out the
She
big
knows.
secret.
She knows that the owl service was there. She's been at that house for a long time and knows that it's actually in the attic. That's as far as we'll go.
Well, she moved away and was re-employed.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
The family.
Yeah.
And had perhaps forgotten about it.
Maybe.
But there's also something else that happens as well, which I will tell you. There's a wall in the billiard room, and we discover that pieces of this wall are slowly crumbling. And they keep on crumbling and eventually reveal a set of eyes peering out. And there is some kind of fresco, some kind of frieze on the wall. And it's of a woman. And I found that bit spooky when you just could see the eyes looking through.
I think that was more spooky for me than sort of the rest of the book, really. The happenings in the rest of the book. And the fact that it started with the eyes and then other bits get unveiled in that fresco.
And I'm not going to say any more about where this story goes, but I'm going to talk about another scene which I found really spooky as well. And it wasn't on the TV show. It's the scene where Gwyn follows Alison to the hen house.
Yeah.
And he has to walk through a marshy area to get to her. And he is kind of followed by marsh gas. Marsh gas flames, which of course were known as will-o'-the-wisps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Weren't they?
In the adaptation, the TV adaptation, instead of the hen house, she was sitting in the trunk of a tree, and you didn't have any of the marsh gases. So
I thought there was a hen house in the...
No, but that scene is her in the tree trunk, in the tree.
No, there's a hen house in the show.
There is a hen house in the show, but that scene is in there.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, Paul. Anywho, so your thoughts?
Can I give my thoughts?
Yeah.
I thought it was a really fascinating read. I read it when I was about 12, I think. I don't think I got the whole story behind it, but reading it all these decades later, I really enjoyed it. It's quite dated in terms of language in some ways. It was written in 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But what is lovely is how the Welsh language, even though it's all in English, you feel the Welsh language in the dialogue. The Welsh characters, you really feel as though they're Welsh. The English characters, you feel as though they're English. So I really liked that. The one thing that I find really mysterious is that Margaret, who is the mum
Of
we of Alison,
Alison.
and Alison's mum has married her step brother's father, obviously. But we never see Margaret.
No.
We hear about Margaret, and Margaret sees them, and we get told what Margaret is doing and where she is, but we never see Margaret. And also, then we look at why Alison's father has died. That's why it's her and her mother. And then in the other relationship, the father of the wife of Clive, who is the father of Roger, she was unfaithful. So you believe that marriage broke down.
Mm.
And then with Nancy, who is the housekeeper, if you like, and the cook, and Gwyn's mother, there's also sort of separation issues there. So there's a lot of mother issues, I think, in this book, which I don't really know quite what they're all about. But then when you look at the story, the fable behind this, that again, there's sort of like maternal issues of sit in that.
If you look at Ariane Rod's story, who's Clue's mother in the legend of Blodeuwedd, she's got a lot of issues. There's a whole backstory. I mean, I've read, so you can read all of these legends in the Mabinogion, which I've had a look at. I've certainly not read it. I've read sections of it. And that gives the full story of Blodeuwedd. And of course, it gives the whole background as well, which is quite complex. So I think that's mirroring the complexity of those ancient medieval stories and bringing them into real life. Of course, modern life is full of complexity. And actually, I think it's quite interesting that in the 60s, Alan Garner was writing about complex family structures, which were not as much talked about as they are now.
Yeah.
And
with Nancy and Gwyn, you've got another sort of separate family there, if you like, because you don't know who the father is. But maybe as you read the book, something comes out about that.
You do find out who the father is. And of course, there is, I mean, if you pick through the book, you can kind of put the jigsaw together.
Yeah.
But it's not, to me, it wasn't obvious on the first read. I've sort of read it twice. And reading the Mabinogion as well, the section on Blodeuwedd, on her story, and those legends, it kind of all came together. And I love that about a book. I love being able to think about it further and research it further and dig, down into the layers. And if a book is associated with a real landscape as well, and yet there is a set of legends and a bit of fiction to go with it too, that landscape becomes even more appealing. I've got to visit the Stone of Gronw.
Well, we will.
Definitely. And film it for you guys too. And get possessed.
Yeah, we might do. I might have a few drinks. Yeah.
And somebody mentioned earlier, it sounds supernatural. It is supernatural. It is a supernatural story.
It is, yeah.
And there are several supernatural things that happen. One of the scenes that stands out to me is when Alison is reading the Mabinogion in the garden, because it's set in a hot summer as well. She's reading the Mabinogion, and she is challenged by Gwyn, and he says something that she doesn't like, and the book flies through the air and attacks him like a bird, like a bird of prey, like an owl perhaps. That I found really quite scary, and they portrayed that in the TV series quite well.
Quite well, yeah.
You know, even down to the reflection in her glasses.
Yeah.
That's described in the book. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, is it an easy read? No.
No,
it's
I don't
not
think
an
it is
easy
an
read. Yeah, language and was it Alison? Sorry, yeah, Alison. You said about it being a slow start. I think apart from, for me, apart from the Welsh language dialogue, which, as I say, is in English, everything else was not quite a flow until you got into it. But once I got into it, I wanted to turn the pages. I really did. And in fact, I picked up this book at the library on a Saturday morning at about 11:30. I read an hour before lunch, and by 5 o'clock, I'd finished the whole book. So I enjoy it? Absolutely. And it's a book that I would read again. I did see it in the charity shop, and I'm sort of really annoyed I didn't buy it, because I think it was £1, and it's a book that I know I'm going to want to read again. So I've read it as a sort of, well, not even a teenager, but as a sort of 12-year-old, and didn't really understand it. Knowing the fable behind it now, as I do, I want to read this again, because I think I'll get more out of it with another read. I won't read it quite yet, because there's other things to read, but it's going to be on my reading list for the future.
I must admit, I found second read, it was even more fulfilling, because I understood more of the backstory. I understood the legend more. I understood the things that Hugh Halfbacon says. He's the
gardener handyman,
who harbours a secret, a couple of secrets, big secrets, in fact.
And it's all about keeping secrets from family members as well. That's another thing, you know. You even feel that with Clive and his ex-wife, the unfaithfulness, the secrets that were kept in that marriage. And it intertwines through the book.
I think it also reflects the time as well, because I think things weren't as open. You know, I think we all sort of seem to wear our hearts on our sleeves these days, you know, and also family dynamics and unusual family structures are much more common now. So I think, that it is about those secrets. And I think also, for me, it's about that feeling of enchantment, of something more hiding behind real life as well. And also belief in something more, in something mystical and magical, because I think it's all well and good living our lives today with high technology and, you know, these magical devices that we have. I think our sense of magical fantasy is sometimes a bit watered down. Because I still find what we have technologically as very amazing, that it all works how it does, and, you know, radio signals being transported between devices, and, you know, all of that, Wi-Fi, that's all very magical and would be considered magical by somebody from a different time. And I think sometimes we have to have these big stories to satisfy our needs. And actually, this is a very simple story based on a simple legend, if you like. And it sort of transports you to a time where we were satisfied by that alone. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I think I'm getting my point
You were
across.
talking about a simpler time when things were sort of in some ways easier.
And I think also it kind of reminds me of those feelings of childhood, of visiting places that were considered magical, like Alderley Edge, for example, and being filled up with that feeling that something magical was going to happen to you. Whether you'd feel like that if something really did happen to you that was strange and supernatural, I don't know.
Well, it's a bit like when we went for a walk the other day, and I said about finding a body in the woods, and wouldn't that be exciting? And it was like, I suppose in reality it wouldn't be that exciting.
Not at all. But do you remember that time we went for a walk in the Chilterns pool, and it was late afternoon, and I said I'd like to get the sunset from the Chilterns. You know the Chilterns, I've taken loads of photographs over the years and shared them on social media. We decided to go for a late, I think it was...
We caught the sunset.
Was it spring?
It was the spring equinox, and we caught sunset.
And we caught the sunset. And in order to get back to the car, we had to walk back through the wood. And it was rapidly getting quite dark.
It's a good 20-minute walk back. Fast walk.
And I was beginning to get freaked out.
You were, yeah.
Because this is quite a spooky wood. And it was getting really dark. And I'm not great in the dark with my eyes, you know. And my mind's going overtime, absolute overtime. I'm starting to see things out the corner of my eye. I'm starting to think of dangers. And I'm trying to rationalize it at the same time. And there's a moment in the owl service where Gwyn says to Alison, as he's taking her through through that really tense period, he says, think of cold kippers, to try and get her to not feel scared. And I kind of got it, because that's how I felt that night we were walking through that woodland. I was terrified, and it wasn't fully dark. So it's easy to see how in the past, people that had to go through the wild woods with the creatures of the wild woods, how you can freak yourself out if there aren't any creatures, because you start to see stuff. Cold kippers, as in cold fish.
Yeah, not as in coal as in you burn.
Yeah,
cold as in
chilly. So yeah, I can kind of see where the imagination can draw all this inspiration from the spooky old woods at night, you know?
I think there's also, in the book, you're also within a house and the grounds of a house and the valley for quite a big chunk of the book. And then at one point, two of the protagonists try to leave. And they go into the village to try and make a phone call, and there's a huge storm going on, and all of a sudden they're surrounded by villagers. So there's quite a sort of matter of claustrophobia in that. When you go from a house which has been quite calm, even though it's got its secrets, into a village where you're completely surrounded by villagers. We're going to watch The Wicker Man, and I thought of The Wicker Man in that scene, because I know that happens, sort of something similar happens in The Wicker Man.
There is a moment where you feel as though they can never escape.
Yeah.
That they're trapped in this valley.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's a few thoughts on the owl service. I'm going to drink my tea now.
You drink your tea.
And Paul, I'm going to hand you over. I just want to say thanks to everybody for your comments on the owl service. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I think it is a worthwhile read. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm drinking my tea now. Let's hand over to Paul for the Thursday Murder Club, which I haven't read. I started it. I read the taster on Kindle.
Did you read the cover?
Yes, I read the cover.
But you only got down as far as murder and gave up.
I thoroughly enjoyed the cover. No, I read the taster. You're very welcome, everybody. You're very welcome. Thank you.
So, going from a book which has got a huge amount of backstory in it, a huge amount of intrigue and secrecy, to the Thursday Murder Club, which sort of has none of those things, I think it's fair to say. Um, it's set in a retirement home in Cooper's called Cooper's Chase, which has got a nursing home a bit further up the road. And this was quite an interesting reading. This was quite interesting for me because where For Our Sake is in Cranley in Surrey, there is a retirement complex called Elmbridge Village, which is not its own sort of like quintessential village. It is a complex of retirement homes, sort of like 1 and 2 bedroom little houses, a bit like mum and dad lived in, but this was a much bigger thing. Wonderfully landscaped. They play bowls there. There's a bowls court. I think there's tennis courts as well. There's a mini allotment there. And I know that there is they have lots of events that go on in the communal rooms there. And that is the sort of premise behind the Thursday Murder Club. So it's sort of like if you look on a notice board, you might see Wednesday afternoon knitting, you know, Wednesday evening darts, Thursday murder club. So that's where the Thursday Murder Club comes from. That's where the name of it comes from. So basically, it's about these 4 characters who are all retired. You're going to ask me a question?
No, I'm waiting for the description, Paul. Don't be so. Don't start now, Paul.
It's about 4 of these retired people who get together and start the Thursday Murder Club. And they are, I've written this down because I need to, they are Elizabeth, Joyce, Ron, and Ibrahim. Those are the 4 characters. And I have to say, the description of the 4 characters and how we travel through their lives, through, I think it's maybe a couple of weeks this book is set, is really interesting because you get to know those characters really well. And I think we all sort of know some of those characters. You know, some are a bit edgy, some are very precise. Ibrahim is an accountant. Ibrahim is actually my second favourite character. Of the 4, he's my favourite, but there's another character that I like more. And basically what happens is a murder occurs, and the Thursday Murder Club, which looks at old cases, you'll have to read the book to find out how they get these old cases, but they look at old cases. Elizabeth decides that a murder has happened within their grounds almost, and the Thursday Murder Club is going to investigate this. And they are helped out, and they help out the police, the local police. And it's all very cozy. It really is. It's all very cozy. And I think it's an easy read. I know someone has read it and they found it quite a challenging read, but I think language-wise, being able to get into the characters, being able to get into the scenario of what goes on, it's a really easy read. And as we go through the book, more murders happen, as they sort of, you know, normally do in Midsummer Murders. Exactly the same thing happens. And we follow the story both in real time, and Joyce, who's one of the 4, she writes her own diary. So at every sort of couple of chapters, we read a bit about Joyce's diary or what she has written, and it brings us up to date. And I think that's quite a good device because it moves the story along without you having to be present in it. And I've seen that done before, and I'm sure it will be done again, and maybe I might even use it in something that I'm writing. But yeah, it's a cozy crime read. There is a character in it called Bogdan, and Bogdan, I think, is most probably my favourite character. He is, he's Polish, and he seems to be that type of person that nothing phases him, and whatever you ask him to do, he will find a way of doing it. And he's sort of in this first book, because there are 3 sequels and I haven't read those, but in this first book he sort of plays both sides of sort of good and evil, but he's very much sitting on the fence. And there's various other deaths that are found, are woven into that story. So yeah, I think it's an interesting read and has no depth to it like the Owl Service has. Will I read the sequels? Yes. Will I rush and read the sequels? Most probably not. Even though I found it an enjoyable read and an easy read, I didn't find the denouement about who actually was the murderer fair to the reader, because it's not something that you could have known, I think, through the book. And I really like that. I like Agatha Christie and so many of those other books. You pick up the thread and you go, oh yeah, of course, so and so was in the library at that time, or so and so could have met them and didn't go on the train and got a car to the station instead. This isn't like that. And if someone wants to sort of point out the bits in here that lead us to the murderer, I'd love to know. Yeah. So is it worth a read? I think if you like cozy crime, it's definitely worth a read. I shortly after I read this, or was it no, before I read this, I read The House of Silk, which is the new, or it's maybe actually 10 years old now, but it's a new Sherlock Holmes, and I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed this because I found it more fulfilling. So yeah, but I think if you like cozy crime, you like Midsummer Murders, it's worth a read if you've got time. If you want to pick up a book and you don't regularly pick up books, pick this one up. If you're an avid book reader, maybe not.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't read. I really don't read that often at all. And I think I said in the newsletter that what I tend to do is reread favourites, and the rest of my reading tends to be factual stuff, So I don't know whether it would even appeal to me. I started The Taster on Kindle. The humour in it sort of struck me as slightly Victoria Woodish.
I think it is. Some of the humour there is,
you know, which of course I've got Victoria Wood to do that for me. I could read a Victoria Wood sketchbook if I wanted that kind of humour. I don't tend to read crime fiction, mainly because I find it quite hard. I find it quite hard to understand what's going on. And even though with the Owl Service, I had to kind of flick back a couple of times to really get what was happening, I don't like to have to do that all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like to sort of eat the story. Do you know what I mean? I like to devour it and get into a rhythm, get it rolling. In fact, I can remember reading Ben Elton's book Gridlock many years ago, and that was one of those stories that you could just devour because it had such a pace to it. It really, really moved forwards, Yeah, I don't like things to be too complex because it doesn't feel satisfying to me.
I like to be able to work things out, and I think that's why I do like Agatha Christie, because you usually have the denouement scene at the end where everything is brought together and it gets explained to you. So
I mean, of course, with the owl service, you could say, well, that was quite complex. But I think because it has the charm of where it's set, that immediately sparks an interest. And if there is an interest behind the place and the location, then that drives me enough to be interested a little bit more, because I can identify with it. That's the key, I think, probably with me,
I think my takeaway from this is very much that the elderly and more elderly people should not be written off, because there is still a use there. And I mean, several people have mentioned that it's being made into a film. I think the filming is going to start next year, so we'll most probably get it out, I would have thought, at 2025, something like that. But I can see why it sold so well. If you think of all these retirement villages around the country, and people who want to feel engaged with things of their own generation and age group, I think this is absolutely perfect. I mean, it's fun, it's cozy crime. It's not satisfied, or it didn't satisfy me in a number of ways, but I did like the nuances of character that were in there. And when Joyce is doing her diary, there's a wonderful thing about when she makes a cup of herbal tea for the detective. I don't think I got that, but there's a female detective, PC, and she makes a cup of tea for this person, and it's herbal tea. And there's this scene about whether, do I leave the tea bag in or do I take the tea bag out? What's the right thing to do with herbal tea? Because I've never really made herbal tea before. And I really liked that. There's nuances like that of all of the characters, that really makes it feel quite homely and comforting and cozy. Yeah, and Ron is an interesting one, because Ron, who's one of the four, his son is a retired boxer, very successful boxer, and his son Richie is in this book as well. And I think what he was trying to do is get various different ages in there, sort of, from sort of 25 upwards. Yeah.
Donna.
Donna. Yeah. Donna.
Thank
Donna
you.
de Freitas. Donna de
Thank
Freitas. Yeah.
Lovely.
So it's there we are.
So marks out of 10?
I think 5.5
out of 10.
Out of 10.
What about the owl service?
I think 8.
I would give the owl service probably 9 out of 10, because it did grip me, it did interest me. And even though I'm not a big reader, I do like things, and I like things that are light to read, but I do also occasionally like to do a bit of a deep dive into something, especially, as I said before, if it's got a connection with a place that I know and that I'm interested in, then I'm quite happy to do a deep dive, and I'm quite happy to do some side reading around the other sections of the story, the legend, the place, all of that. I'm quite happy to do that, because I find that interesting. I'm a Virgo at the end of the day. I like analysing things, not everything, but some things.
Things of choice.
Things of choice and things of, well, you can't analyse everything in life, Paul.
No, I think I'm a Leo,
day.
and I spend my whole day analysing everything.
No, you can't do that. You have to choose what you're going to do a deep dive into. You can't deep dive into absolutely everything in life. You just can't do it. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for taking part in this read along. It's been a really good response.
I think it's interesting because people have been putting up their scores there, And again, it's sort of quite mixed. There's people who've really enjoyed the Thursday Murder Club. And I believe a friend said to me earlier on today that the, what was the second one? The Man Who Died Twice is more interesting because we learn a lot more about Elizabeth. And I have listened to some of the audiobook of that, and yeah, I've stopped on that audiobook now. Yeah. But it's interesting to see some people really liked one, didn't like the other, vice versa. But yeah, my preference would be to read the Owl Service again, definitely.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So we're now going to have to come up with a couple of other books.
Oh, I've got my next year. I've sorted my next year.
Well, I haven't.
I have.
Well, we can't announce it yet until the next episode.
Which
will be Read Along Part 3.
Which is?
And it'll be in January.
Really?
Yeah.
Are we going to give it? Oh no, I've got to do a read along because I've got a ghost story, so it's got to be Christmas.
Oh, if we get time. We may not have time, Paul.
No, we've got to keep it going. We've got to keep people reading.
Yeah, but we did it 1 month, second month. Now it needs to be third month.
No, we could do one this week. Yeah.
No, we're not doing one this week, Paul. Sorry, no. So watch out for Read Along Part 3 when we'll be choosing 2 more books to read and review in exactly the same method as we did with these. It'll be a pre-record and then a live. So watch out for the notification.
Yeah.
Lovely. And thank you everybody for joining us today. It'll be in the next video when we give you the books. And we have to allow a little bit of time to elapse.
So we're just reading messages. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And well, I can't, Dorothy, because I've not chosen my book. So we can't do one without the other. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll say goodbye.
And if you've got any books that you think we should be reading, then let us know. And yeah.
If you want to recommend stuff, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. And I think on Planet Vegetaria I think I might share some of the books that I've already read, because I actually keep an Excel spreadsheet of all the books that I have read. It only goes back maybe about 8 years, 9 years, something like that, and they're quite eclectic because I'm quite an eclectic reader. So yeah. I might share a few on Planet Vegetaria, so make sure you're on there.
Okay, it's time to say goodbye. So thank you, bloody thank you for joining us today here on the sofa for Richard and Paul's Read Along. Yeah. So take care, everybody. We will see you. Well, I'll see you. No, Paul, you'll see everybody on Monday for a week at the plot. I'll see you on Saturday for my daily vlog roundup. And of course, we'll see you Saturday night, Sunday morning for
Sunday Chat.
Lovely.
There we are.
Take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye.